Okay, so guys, sitting out a sec, let's just have a quick look. Oh, guys, it's over. It's actually over $262 already. Like, that means that the challenge is over plus some, because we need 180, so that means we're on 10,080, which is absolutely insane. Wow, yeah, I'm definitely stopping now for sure. Oh, guys, I gotta say, like, this is like such an amazing feeling. Yeah, it feels like, it feels insane. This has been my life. I turned $100 into $10,000. In this video, I'm going to take you through the recent challenge that I completed on PokerStars, turning $100 into $10,000. We play cash games from NL2 to NL200. I will talk you through the tools that I used, on the table work, off the table work, that could really help you in your game. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Let's kick things off by looking at the overall results of the challenge. We played just over 460,000 hands. We had over $8,000 in green line, which is the monies we win actually playing on the tables. And then we had just over $2,000 in rakeback from PokerStars, giving us a total of just over $10,000 for the challenge. We kicked off the challenge in March 2023, and we finished the challenge at the end of January 2024. So it took around 10 months to complete in total, and we had a 3.7 BB per 100 win rate overall. Now, the BB per 100 win rate was not our goal. The goal overall was just to make $10,000. Whether that mostly came from rakeback, mostly came from greenline, or a big mix of the two, I was going to be super happy either way, just to build a roll on stars. So this is the overall result for the micro stakes from NL2 to NL10, playing mostly on Zoom, but mixing in some reg tables as well, so that I could get used to playing the micros again, really adjusting as much as I could to the pool. It was a bit choppy at the start, as you can see, but then we start to come into our own overall as I started to attack villains much more aggressively where they showed weakness. And I have a kind of concept that I call waiting for gifts, which is exactly what it says. It's just letting my opponents dust it off, and I could just collect all that money when I know that they're going to overbluff or they would be particularly weak, or start attacking me because I was perceived to be weak when I was doing lots of checking, and then just going crazy for value, even if that meant things like 5x pot jamming the river with the super nuts. Even though it may not make sense from a theoretical perspective, I would have an idea of what I thought villain would be representing and just stacking them on the river or making them pay me off when I'm taking these crazy lines. That paid off quite a lot, and we managed to make just over $450 at the micro stakes. We played around 100,000 hands, and this is when then I decided to go over to the low stakes, which is what I will show you next. But before I go into the low stakes, I will show you a hand example that I played at NL10, where we open under the gun with ace king off. We get 3-bet from the cutoff to a slightly larger size, but we are deeper, so that's fine. And I end up going for the 4-bet. This is a smaller size. I should be going bigger, but my opponent was a fish, so we decided to go a little bit smaller and keep in all of the trash hands that he would be 3-betting. He goes for the call, and I go for a standard small size on the flop. I think going quarter pot is fine. Being a bit deeper, I like to go a little bit bigger. And he ends up raising me on this board. Yes, he may have some sixes, some deuces, some ace-6, some ace-deuce. He is a fish, as I've already mentioned. But to me, this just looks like random nonsense when he clicks it back like this. He doesn't really represent a very strong range, so I end up just going for the call. And I mentioned the concept earlier around just like waiting for gifts, and this is one of them, where now the king comes on the turn, and I check, and he's just betting less than half pot. This is just clearly some kind of nonsense. I'm not sure what kind of hands would want to do this because no hand really wants to raise on the flop. Maybe at some smaller frequency, being this deep, but not too often. But there's no need for me to raise or anything. There is no scare cards. The board is super dry. There's no really draws. Maybe he has some 5-4 or something like that. But there's no reason for me to fast play. And we just let him do his thing. I check the river, risking him checking back, but of course he won't. And he bets this, again, random, smaller size, just under half pot. And I end up just going for the call here. And he has the pocket jacks. So just random nonsense from weaker player that's known to be a little bit crazy and just letting him do his thing. So this is when we come on to the low stakes, where we played NL 25 and NL 50, mostly on Zoom, some reg tables, but then mostly Zoom in the end. We played around 150,000 hands and we won around $2,000. This was the stake that I would say personally that I was struggling to adjust then from the micros, because all of my exploits and things were not working as well, as there were more regs in the pool, many more nits in the pool that just didn't have it in them to start going for crazy bluffs on the river. There were some, and I really focused on finding those as much as I could and tagging them and making lots of notes. And these are the stakes that I would say I'd put in quite a bit of work, mainly focusing on showdowns that I'd seen against my specific villain, so I could start to categorize them in a way, whether they were nits, whether they were regs or a different kind of nitty reg or loose reg, whatever, as well as the good players or better players, the people that were kind of up and coming, that are really putting work into their game. And I really started to drill deep into those specific people to really understand what was going on. So what I would do at the end of each of my sessions is I would look up all the showdowns that I'd seen and start making lots and lots of notes. Was this a case of they were looking at their hand and this was triggering a size? Was it that something more creative was going on, or something more on the theoretical side? To give me an idea of how I could adjust, because the pool was much smaller and there were plenty more regs than there were fish. But I really tried to identify those fish to start attacking them more and start to reg battle a little less. So not taking such closer spots where I could call, I could fold. If it was against some reg, I was mostly folding because they just didn't have it in them, generally speaking, to overbluff spots or to buff in general. So I just started to be more on the value heavy side again, and then turn all my attention to the recreational. And here we come over to our mid stakes, and I've decided to split this into two and not combine them. So this is NL 100 graph that we played during the challenge, and we played roughly 180,000 hands, or just over. So most of our volume came from, or a big part of our volume came from the NL 100 Zoom pool. And as you can see, we run really nice. When we first set off, we ran the start, or we played pretty well overall. And as you can see throughout, it's lots and ups and down, peaks and troughs, like a mounting range, very much up, down, up, down. The reason I've split this in NL 200 is because I'll also show you the 200 graph separately, so you can see why then I decided to go back to NL 100 to finish the challenge, because we weren't running very well at 200 and it took a lot more adjusting than what I thought. With 100, the main thing is, again, the pool is very, very small. It's reg infested. There are very few recreationals in the pool, so a lot of the time you're reg battling. But now and again, you see the people coming up in the stakes from NL 50 to NL 100 that might be on the weaker side, or maybe have more obvious leaks as they're learning their game. And these are the ones that I really tried to focus on as well. But overall, we did make 5.4k over 180,000 hands, which is about 2.9 BB per 100, roughly about that, maybe a little bit less. And this is where I put in most of my work as well. I studied, of course, with Poker Code, with our cash game coach, Stefan Sontheimer, going through his concepts, his material, his videos, where he has all the concepts that I was following and the thought process that is ingrained in me, which I wanted to then take and apply to the mid stakes, which worked out very, very well. But on top of that, I also needed, or I felt like I needed some additional support, which is where I hired my cash game coach, Mr. Gold, who really helped me navigate the pool very well. We had weekly sessions on a Friday where we talked through last week's sessions, what I wanted to focus on, where are the toughest spots I'm finding, database review with him so we could do some quick leak finding, and then we could build a plan around that. And then I would go away and start looking into that more by using GTO Wizard to really start to plug gaps in my knowledge to the best that I could, and then try to apply those spots in the next one. One of the biggest things that I took away from my coaching with Mr. Gold, who is, I couldn't recommend him enough. He's an incredible mid-stakes crusher, and anyone who's played with him in the pool will tell you that he's very difficult to play against, and he has a very clear way of how he navigates the pool and what he focuses on as his main exploits, but then also knowing when to fold. And this was a big part of what we talked about, is when I should not be bluff catching so much, where the pool just is not bluffing. And this became very, very clear quite quickly when I got enough sample of the pool, and then I could start to adjust and change my game. Also, for this one, I'll also show you my all-in adjusted, just to give you an idea of how NL 100 went for us. We were kind of there or thereabouts, break even, sometimes a little run bad, sometimes some run good. And in the end, we run very hot to be able to get up to this $5,500. So we did sun run towards the end, but it's always nice to have that. And you will have that as well as some of those big downswings. As you can see on here as well, it wasn't all plain sailing, where, especially towards the end, you can see these big grinds up, $1,000 and then $1,000 drop, and then $800 upswing, and then $500 drop, and up and up and up, up, down. So, and just before the end, you could see that we had a big hit to the roll where, again, we lost pretty much close to $1,000. And this is our Zoom to 100 graph, where we played just over 25,000 hands, where I was pretty much break even for that stretch. But as you can see, we had some big swings throughout. Very much unlike the NL 100 graph, where yes, we did have some peaks and troughs, but these were very extreme at 200 Zoom. It definitely took some adjusting and getting used to. But overall, because of the nature of the pool, and again, the pool is very, very small, there's not many runners in that pool, and a lot of them are regs that have been playing for a long time, who are, some of them, doing very, very well, not with very high win rates, but enough where they are beating the pool. And I found this particularly difficult to adjust to. So after I got to almost break even at the stake, I decided to park NL 200 as part of the challenge, because dealing with these 2.5K downswings was pretty tough to deal with. And as you can imagine, working painstakingly hard for, let's say, 9 months and losing a big part of our bankroll and then having to grind our way back up was pretty disheartening. But I was glad that we were able to do it. And I'm going to show you a couple of hands that fed into this, and you can see some examples of where the pool is just not bluffing, but also where I should have been folding. Hey YouTube, if you're enjoying the content and you would like to see more, then please support the channel by clicking the subscribe button and also by clicking the like button. Thank you very much for watching. So this is the hand example that I wanted to share, where it's a good example of where we should be looking to fold. And let me just explain. We are 300 big blinds deep at 200 Zoom. We pick up pocket queens, we open, we get 3-bet from the small blind from a good reg, and we end up going for the 4-bet. Obviously, I'm going for a very large size here because we are very, very deep. And I get met with a 5-bet. Now, In game, I wasn't quite sure how I should navigate or whether I should be overfolding a spot like this. I can tell you now that I know that I definitely should be folding 5-bet in this kind of scenario where we are insanely deep is significantly underbluffed. And I'm not going to see hands like ace-4, ace-5 suited, these kinds of combos. It's just aces and probably kings even just calls this 4-bet to this size. Maybe sometimes 5-betting, but it's certainly just skewed towards pocket aces. But nonetheless, I decided to go for a call in-game. On the flop comes 8-5 deuce rainbow. I'm expecting to see some small bets on the flop, something like 25%, maybe even a third. Villain does go ahead and they do bet 25% on the flop. I decide to go for the call. Having queens here, not having a club, I mean, this seems okay. I don't think I should be folding the flop, but it does feel somewhat close to me. But if I'm going to be calling pre-flop, I don't think I can fold on an 8-high board just because I don't have the queen of clubs. Turn comes, one of the worst turn cards in the deck, completes the flush with the ace of clubs, and villain now decides to go for a check. I'm purely just giving up my hand now, and I just go for the check back. The river seals my fate pretty much, and I river that queen of hearts. Villain still has, in theory anyway, he will have some ace-king in his range. He will have some pocket kings in his range as well that he's always now checking that I'm ahead of, but then decides to go for the jam. This really put me in a tough situation where I'm thinking, okay, there is ace-king. Does he bet like this with kings with a club? Could he ever have some kind of ace-queen off? Probably not. But I decide then to go for the call where I seal my fate and I run into the pocket aces for a 1.2k pot. So this is the biggest pot that I lost during the challenge in one hand. Losing $600 sucks a lot, and the fact that we run into zero bluffs kind of tells you the story. But being so deep, it is very difficult to find those bluffs. I need him to have some kind of ace-king or pocket kings with that club to be jamming here, and this one was a brutal one. I'll show you another hand, but this time was very, very different, and we open the ace-king, 200 big blinds effective, and we see a 3-bet from our opponent, who's also 200 big blinds deep, and we decide to go for the 4-bet. Now, we're not as deep as the other hand, but we can still go like 36 big blinds seems reasonable to me, and he does end up calling. Flop comes king 8-8. I think we go for some smaller bets. I think this bet size is absolutely fine, so I pick the 25% sizing. He should have all kinds of pocket queens, jacks. He will have some ace-king himself. He will have some slow-played pocket aces. Not really seeing too much 8x. Maybe he has some kind of 8-7 suited. So 8-7 of clubs, 8-7 of diamonds. And he does decide to call. My estimation of this villain overall was that he was pretty sticky and was overcalling quite a lot. Even pre-flop, he might even be a little bit wider than what he should be. But that kind of doesn't stop me from just continuing to barrel my hand on that 9 of diamonds on the turn. Nothing really changes. Pocket 9s gets there now, that fills up to a board, but I don't think he will have that too often, and it's very limited with that 8x like we said. So I just go for another small bet on the turn, because by the river, if he calls, we're in a nice stack to pot ratio wise, it's close to 1, and this is a very nice spot where I can just jam, which is what I do. And he thought about it for a while, and he ended up calling and picked off with the pocket queens. So two very different opponents in the same pool. One of them pretty sticky and falling into probably the same trap that I fell into last time, where it's quite unlikely that I'm going to show up here with many weaker hands that I would be bluffing. So I probably would have given up some, being this deep, like maybe some ace-5 that I'm 4-betting, for example. I'm probably not going to keep barreling on the river if he calls twice. So that's the two hands from Zoom, two very different ones, two very different opponents as well, where we have one more on the calling station side and then one on, let's say, more the tighter side in a very deep scenario. So this is the biggest pot that I've played in online poker at 200 zoom, where we are close to 350 big blinds deep, and we have pocket nines on the button. So we see our opponent opening for 2.2 bigs from the cutoff. We 3-bet from the button. A little bit on the smaller side. I probably should go a little bit bigger, but I think it's okay. And then we get 4-bet, again, to a smaller 4-betting size, probably matching my smaller 3-bet size, but he should probably go a little bit bigger regardless. And because he makes it a bit smaller, we decide to go for the call with nines. Usually I'd probably be folding nines. It's kind of close. Maybe 10s I'm calling. Nines, maybe it's just a little bit in between, but definitely calling in this scenario being deep. And we flop bottom set. Now this, I had mixed feelings when this flop came because there are so many cooler scenarios. There's straights out there if he's capable of 4-betting. Hands like Jack 10 suited. He can also have pocket kings, queens, and then I'm stacking aces. I'm never getting paid by jacks if he 4-bets this one pre. And he also has some ace king, maybe some king queen offsuit. So this is his kind of range. He goes for a third pot on the flop, which is pretty standard. You can go a third pot when you're this deep. Probably going smaller, like 25% is reasonable, but a third pot's absolutely fine. We obviously go for the call. We pick up the boat on the turn with that queen, and I see another bet from my opponent, which now he's going half pot. Now, I wasn't quite sure how to interpret this half pot, because it seems in some ways not a bad sizing to use on the turn. I was expecting something a little bit bigger, so that on the river he has a clear jamming stack to pot ratio wise, but I think in this scenario that I have quite a clear call. It's quite unlikely that he's going to have quads now, so his hands are just limited to pocket kings and then maybe some ace king, and of course, even though it's unlikely, he can still have quads as well. So I'm going for the call here. And then on the river, he goes for this size. Like, he goes for a third, which is some kind of blockish bet, which now just looks a lot like some kind of ace king to me, maybe even pocket aces. So I don't think I have a choice but just to jam this one. Again, I'm really not sure in game, being this deep, what the right thing was to do, because he still has all of that real nice super nuts, and I'm just facing a cooler. I don't think kings or queens are going to be going for this size, maybe queens to induce this kind of reaction or open me up to bluff. It did cross my mind in game that maybe he also does this with kings, like playing his kings like his ace king kind of makes sense as well. And he thought about it for a while and ended up going for the call, and he had Jack 10 suited, and we end up winning a 714 big blind pot, or 1.4k. So that was the biggest hand that I played in online. In terms of off the table stuff that I was doing, I mentioned in some of the previous reviews when we were looking at some of the results that I was using my Holder Manager to look up all of the showdowns that I saw during a session. And this is just one typical session that I played after the end of the challenge, that I would look up all of the sessions and I would complete these hands. You can see I've tagged them down here as completed. These are the showdowns that we had, or at least the majority of them, and I would just go through every single one. And my goal was to review every single hand with the goal to make really, really good notes on my opponent if there are some. Even if out of, I don't know, like 170 hands that we played, and that I actually saw a showdown during this session, let's say, or over a 2-day sample, then my goal would just be to review all of these. Some of the hands I will be in, some that maybe I wouldn't have been in, and I will get to see the results of what happened. So let's just take an example like the King Jack. This is a hand that we actually played, where we defend the big blind with King Jack off, which is okay versus cutoff. We can 3-bet as well sometimes, but randomizing and just calling seems also fine. Flop comes ace 6 deuce rainbow. I check. Villain checks behind. Turn is an 8. I go for the check again. He checks. And then river comes a jack. I could decide to block or allow him to bluff. And he decides to bet pot, and I call, and he does have a bluff. And if I just bet this river, then he just folds, but opening him up sometimes is good, but I can also bet sometimes and maybe get a call from like pocket 10s, pocket 9s or something like that. And this is just one example of what I would do. Then there's other functionality that you can use on Hold'em Manager as well to literally look up specific opponents, where you can just go on here and you can just start looking at your opponents, just kind of seeing where you are versus them, and start to make notes on them as well. And this is just another example of how to dig a little bit deeper, and you can go way deeper than this into your opponent to see each stat and how they compare to you, and then you can start to adjust your game accordingly. If they're doing very well, let's say with c-betting, and you see, okay, this is the percentage on average that they are c-betting, and you find that you're way off, but they seem to be doing much better than you in that particular pool or that area, that might be something for you to change in your game and adopt just by simply looking up an opponent. After discussing around off-the-table work using our database to look up specific opponents or look at showdowns, the next important part for me was definitely using GTO Wizard to really understand what would be right in theory, which was one of the key concepts that I talk about from the learnings from Poker Code, which we will come on to. But I was using GTO Wizard to help me immensely improve my game, look up different strategies, range construction, how I should navigate certain board textures in single raise pots, 3-bet pots, and looking for why solver wants to take certain lines. And one of the things that I was doing a lot, for example, I was looking at the flop aggregated reports, which you can use. I don't see too many people using them. There's a really nice video on GTO Wizard's YouTube that shows you how to navigate this one. Or for example, you can just come on here and start to play around with what should the button overall strategy look like, and it gives you that overall view across all different board textures, which ones we should be c-betting the most, which ones we should be over-betting the most, using a smaller size. So for example, I've just filtered this for the overbet size as the main one, and you can see on here all the different kinds of flop textures, and then you can start to filter even more to really start to define those spots much more clearly. And you can do that and then start to play around, and you can really see how you can improve your strategy on different kind of board textures, and you can filter it for whatever kind of boards that you want. And I was doing this quite a lot, and this was helping me. And you can see, for example, on these kinds of boards, when we're button versus big blind in a standard raise pot, these are the kinds of combos that we're really overbetting as per my filters. Obviously, when you look at a board like ace king deuce, ace jack 7, ace queen 6, we have such an advantage that we want to take it now, and that's why the overbet is preferred. And then instead of you kind of saying that you will check this percentage of the time, use this smaller size, this percentage of the time, you can just simplify and say, okay, on ace king 9, I will be overbetting or checking, and those are the lines that you kind of take. You just have one size on the flop if you like, and then you just fit your sizing depending on what that flop is. And this is one of the ways that you can really start to give you a bigger picture of how to navigate different boards, for example. But of course, there are always other things you can do as well. For example, you can upload your hands, which I was doing a lot. So I've just got one that we looked at earlier, that king jack off, that we can just load straight into GTO Wizard, and we can see on here what the results are of this one. So you can see with the king jack, where we call pre-flop, that's preferred, but also we can 3-bet, it doesn't really matter. And we come to the flop, we're checking 100%. And then the turn, we're also checking. There are no betting going on whatsoever on that turn card. Our advantage doesn't change at all. We don't improve whatsoever. Exploitatively, we could think about c-betting small just to fold out some combos. Like folding out king queen here is good. but I'm never folding out obviously like a weak ace that he's going to decide now to check flop and bet the turn. So this is just clear check, and you can see like what I said earlier in the video, we have a choice actually massively blocking this river because we still get called by worse hands, and then when we do check and he bets pot, we're just calling. And you can see this one, and then you can navigate even further to dig into this exact solution, and you could look at from your perspective or from the cutoff's perspective what he should be doing on the flop with something like 10-9 suited, which he's c-betting quite a lot. So again, I can start to formulate an idea of my opponent by looking at the range, and then on the turn, for example, when that 8 comes as well and he has that gut shot, you can see that 10-9 suited wants to overbet high frequency, but he decides to go for the check, which again, maybe he's randomizing. I don't think so. I think he's just looking at his hand. And then on the river, the question is then, does he decide to bluff in this line? And yes, he should bet on this one, which is the size that he used when he took this line. So super interesting to look through Wizard, and then you can start to build an idea of what will be right in theory and what are my options. So I can say, okay, on the river, I think my hand is quite a nice check. Then you can just look up and really consider your thought process as well to see whether this is something that you actually want to be doing or not, and go from there. And then coming on to PokerCode. And PokerCode is my chosen platform to improve my game, with Stefan Sontheimer as our cash game coach, as well as some other amazing coaches like Fedor Holtz, Matthias Eibinger. For the MTC players, this platform has something for everyone for sure, and I just wanted to highlight this one as something that I'm also using to improve my game. And you can see on here we have our cash game section as well, where you can see all the different videos outlined by Stefan that he records himself. And I've watched so many of these, for example, like his live play videos where he goes through every single decision discussed, all the way to like playing on Zoom, 3-tabling, 4-tabling, all of this stuff. But such a great platform. There's hours and hours and hours of content. I haven't even consumed all of it. I keep going back through videos or concepts that I'm unsure about. And he talks about his overall concept and his approach to the game, which is the 3 questions that I always talk about on stream, which is what would be right in theory, what is villain doing wrong, and what are the right exploits. 3 key questions I ask myself when I'm in any poker spot. And I get this thought process from Stefan himself, and he talks about this one a lot and his general approach. Very easy to follow, very nicely laid out, a bit like Netflix, I would say. But there's so much on here that you can digest and look to improve your game on. I'm also partnered with PokerCode for my stream as well, so I want to say a big thanks to the people at PokerCode, but also a big special thank you to Stefan Sontheimer himself for coming on my Twitch stream very recently, where we had an awesome 2-hour session talking about the challenge, talking about poker in general, talking about a little bit about his life, and that was super great to hear from him directly. So if you are interested in hearing more about PokerCode, I will leave a link in the description below where you can find out more information and use my link if you would wish to sign up, and you can reach out to me directly for any questions. I want to say a huge thank you to everybody that supported me during this challenge. We had a crazy year with many ups and many downs, but it was so great to finish the challenge of getting to that $10,000 mark. I want to say a huge thank you to PokerCode and a big shout out to Stefan Sontheimer for his thought process, his 3 key questions that he asks himself in every single poker spot that has helped me significantly improve my game. I also want to say a huge thank you to my cash game coach, Mr. Gold, because without him, I do not think I would have finished the challenge, or I definitely wouldn't have finished the challenge as early as I did. He's an incredible coach, and I will leave details below for both PokerCode and Mr. Gold. So if you would like to sign up to PokerCode, or if you would like one-to-one coaching with Mr. Gold, I'll make sure that you can find the links below and you can get in touch with me for more information. And lastly, I want to say a huge thank you to my Twitch community. We're nearly 2,000 followers strong now, which is an incredible result in just under a year. So without you guys, I don't think it would have been possible for me to have been motivated to keep going all of this time. Thank you very much. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and like this video, and I will see you on the next one.